Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about how to identify the 7 Ontario turtle species that we have here in the land between. We're going to be looking at pictures of each one and figuring out the key features that we want to look for to be able to identify them in the field. So I just wanted to give you a background of the region of the land between before we get into its turtles. So the land between is what we call an ecotone. This is where two ecological boundaries meet. So we have the boundary of the Canadian Shield meeting the boundary of the St. Lawrence lowlands. And when two boundaries meet, what we see is that their features overlap. And this creates a really interesting mosaic of habitat patchiness. So in the land between, this habitat patchiness results in amazing biodiversity. So we have so many species that are just absolutely very abundant in this region, more so than in other places of the province. So for example, we have over a third of Ontario's turtles just in the land between alone. It is also the home of the majority of Ontario's migrating breeding birds. It has a ton of lakes and the highest shoreline density within Ontario. So that's just a little bit of background. As you can see on the map here, it extends in the east from the Frontenac Arch all the way to the Georgian Bay coast in the west and up a little bit towards southern Parry Sound. It skirts underneath along the Algonquin Dome, so it doesn't go into Algonquin. And it really highlights and sort of encompasses most of what we think of as Ontario cottage country. So here is a quick snapshot of the 8 Ontario turtles. We have the wood turtle, Blanding's turtle, spotted turtle, eastern musk turtle, also known as a stinkpot turtle, the northern map turtle, the common snapping turtle, the spiny softshell, which is the one that is not found in the land between, and the painted turtle. And it is the midland painted turtle, the subspecies of the painted turtle, that we have here in the land between. So before we get into the specifics of each of those species, it's a good idea to talk about some general terms that are important to know when talking turtles. So when you think of a turtle, you think of its shell. What you're probably thinking of is its top shell. So a turtle actually has a top shell and a belly shell. The top shell is what we call the carapace, and the bottom shell is what we call the plastron. Both of these protect a turtle and keep it safe from predators when it can withdraw into its shell. Now the shell is made of bony plates, and these are called scutes. So this middle photo of a cute little Blanding's turtle, we see arrows pointing to these bony plates. So these bony plates fuse and make up the shell. So the first turtle we're going to look at is the painted turtle. Now the painted turtle actually has some subspecies, and the subspecies we find in the land between is the midland painted turtle, just for your information. We also have the western painted turtle in Ontario, but that's not found in the land between. So when identifying this guy, the main thing you want to look for is these painted stripes along his skin that are so beautiful. So they're yellow along its head, and then red along his legs, and then also you have these beautiful red blotches along his marginal scutes, which are those small plates that outline the edge of his carapace. So you can see along the side there in the first photo, there are little red blotches along those marginal scutes. You can also see that his shell is pretty flat, so it's not domed shape, which means that he is a good swimmer. So that sort of flatter, streamlined shell makes him a good swimmer. His shell is smooth and black or dark olive green, and he is a medium-sized turtle. He's also the most common turtle that you're going to find in Ontario, so chances are if you see a turtle basking in a wetland, it's probably a painted turtle. They are habitat generalists, which means that they can adapt to most wetlands and water bodies. They are not picky, whereas you'll see some of our other turtle species require more specific habitats. So here we have our magnificent snapping turtle. She is absolutely gorgeous, totally looks like a modern day dinosaur. Her long, beautiful tail with her triangular scales is the best way to distinguish her as a snapping turtle. No other Ontario turtle has a tail as long as her shell with these upright scales. So if you were to zoom in on her tail, you would see that she has 3 rows of these triangular scales. In that middle row, those triangular scales are taller and bigger than the row on either side, which are slightly smaller. Her shell, her top shell, is dark in color. It can be black, brown, and it is often covered in algae, as we see in our first photo. Her belly shell is much smaller. We sort of call it the bikini shell of belly shells because she's not actually able to fully fit her head or her limbs or her legs inside of that belly shell. So what that means is that when she's on land and there is a predator or a threat, she's not able to withdraw into her shell like the other Ontario turtles. So that's why she snaps on land, because that's her only way to protect herself. In water, I don't know if you guys know this, but snapping turtles will actually not snap in water. That's not their natural reaction, because in water, they are not used to feeling threatened. And so they're just going to swim away, or they're going to hide in sediment, because in water, they are the top predator. So if you see a snapping turtle in water, you don't have to go near them and bother them, but you definitely don't have to worry because they are not going to be snapping at you. Another unique feature of snapping turtles is that if you look at her face, you can see that her top portion of her beak, so turtles have beaks just like birds do, her top portion of her beak overhangs or hooks over the lower portion of her beak. And that's unique to snapping turtles here in Ontario. And then she also has 2 barbels, which are like skin tags or little fleshy projections. You can't see that super well in this photo, but those are on her chin, and that's another sort of telltale sign of a snapping turtle. She's also at adult size much larger than any other turtle here in the land between, although province-wide spiny soft shells also get very large. As far as habitat, snapping turtles, like painted turtles, are pretty good at adapting to many different freshwater habitats. So you can find them in most types of water bodies, shallow lakes, wetlands, and their favorite type of habitat is one with slow-moving water, muddy bottom, lots of plants, because these guys actually eat more plants in the wild than they do fish. A study has actually shown, when research have looked at the stomach contents of snapping turtles, that they eat approximately 70% plant matter and 30% fish. Here we have our charismatic, adorable Blandings turtles. So these guys are very easy to identify, probably our easiest to identify of Ontario turtles because of their very distinct yellow throats and chins. So we've got a solid yellow coloring here, not stripes, but a solid color, beautiful bright light yellow. And then their shells are also very unique in the sense that they are very domed. So they're not flat like other species. They have this dome shape, and the color as well as the shell shape really makes it look almost like an old army helmet. You will notice that there are also light yellow flecks on the shell. And you want to notice that these are irregular shaped, light, and fleck looking, and they're not spots or polka dots, which you will see on the spotted turtle later. Blandings turtles love shallow wetlands and shallow freshwater bodies with lots of vegetation, and they are going to travel a lot on land in between these wetlands. So you might see these guys on roadsides or walking around on land close to wetlands because they are highly terrestrial for an Ontario turtle. So here we have our stinkiest turtle in Ontario. An eastern musk turtle, also known as a stinkpot, uses the defense mechanism of releasing a yucky smell when it is threatened in hopes that this will deter predators from trying to eat it. It is one of Ontario's smallest turtles, and its other defense mechanism is that it will also try and bite. So sometimes it can be confused just because of that for a small baby snapping turtle, but of course they're actually quite different. These guys do not have long tails and have completely different faces. These turtles have two distinct light stripes, so they're either white or very pale yellow that extend from its nose, which is a very pointed nose, past its eyes on either side. So you can see those stripes well in both photos here. Their shells are domed shaped, sort of like a Blanding's turtle, but these guys are much smaller than a Blanding's turtle and do not have that solid yellow throat. These turtles love the shallow shorelines of water bodies, so they are often found in what we call the littoral zone, where it's shallow along the edges of wetlands and small lakes where there's lots of vegetation for them to look for food and for them to hide from predators. These guys are not awesome swimmers because of that dome-shaped shell, so you'll often find them walking along the bottom of the water because this is easier for them, and they'll often forage this way. So they'll look for food by walking along the bottom, and they will not often bask on land because they're so small and vulnerable. They instead will often bask at the surface of the water and often under aquatic vegetation. So you can sometimes flip over a lily pad and find a little eastern musk turtle basking underneath. So here we have our northern map turtle. It gets its name because of its distinct map-like contour lines that you can find along its shell, which are hidden here because both of these map turtles have algae on its shell, but it has faint contour lines all over its shell and then these beautiful yellow contour lines along its face, neck, head, arms, and legs. So the best way to identify a map turtle would be by these yellow contour lines as well as its brown flat shell that is often keeled. So when they are first hatching out of their eggs, they have very keeled shells. So that central ridge is very prominent along its carapace. As it ages, that keel becomes less prominent. These turtles are great swimmers, as I said, so they prefer to live in lakes, and they eat mollusks. So they will eat mussels, and they'll crack them open with their beak and eat the mussel inside, and they are actually really handy because they eat zebra mussels, which are a pest and an invasive species in our Great Lakes, so they are great for that. Here we have a very sweet little turtle called the spotted turtle for obvious reasons. Its shell has beautiful dark yellow spots, so they're very easily distinguishable from the yellow flecks of a Blanding turtle because these dots are very big, round polka dots. Spotted turtles will also often have orange markings. It's pretty irregular, not very patterned, along its face and along its front limbs. They're a tiny turtle, so they're similar in size to the eastern musk turtle. And they're very rare in Ontario, so it's not likely that you would see one, but the habitat that they do prefer are bogs and fens. So here we have, lastly, our most rare turtle species in the land between, this beautiful wood turtle. So this turtle is very, very rare because it's very endangered, unfortunately. They live along rivers. They will spend some time in these rivers, but mostly they're actually terrestrial. So they spend a lot of time on land. They can only eat on land. They do not eat in water. And the best way to identify a wood turtle is its wood-like shell. So this shell resembles what you would think of as more of a tortoise shell. It's very sculpted and it sort of has a texture of wood, hence its name. It also has orange neck and orange forelimbs, and it is a very, very smart turtle. So it's sort of thought of as our smartest turtle. It has a really interesting behavior where it will stomp its two front legs and bang its plastron on the ground, and this will send vibrations into the soil, which trick worms to coming up to the surface, and then these little guys have a yummy snack. And that's a wrap. Those are all 7 Ontario turtles found in the land between. If you have any questions about any of this, please email me at citizensciencetlb@gmail.com.